the cancer be moving into end of life phase. So when he got into the hospital, it was bad, but we didn't have it in our head because we were like, well, they haven't told us anything definitive yet of what's happening. The amount of money that she was getting, and he had the financial order that was putting in close to $3,000 in that house a month.
Oh, wow.
So he came to me and he said, I had a talk with my mom about moving in. And we didn't want him to go to mom with that.
Yeah.
And she came back, or she said to him, well, you can't move in with him because you'll just get close to him and then he'll just die. Mom wasn't happy with the fact that they were involved. And then when the funeral came, none of the children were there.
Oh, yeah, so, that's pretty rough.
I think with the school that's when we started to see where the system fails children, because you can't really sign up a kid to school without both parents signing on to it. The fact that she has the children, so
she's the primary carer.
Yeah.
She holds the cards.
She holds the cards. So everyone at that point was like, well, we have to treat her a certain way. We have to speak to her a certain way. We can't.
You can't afford to upset her, really.
Yes, exactly.
You're already playing games, and if she's in a bad mood and you say the wrong thing.
To the point where my in-laws took her on trips, so they would pay for her and the children.
Try and keep her sweet. Yeah. Okay, that's deep. Welcome back to another episode of Disqualified Dads. Today I have a very special guest with me, and she has a story to tell. Sasha, do you want to just introduce yourself and just give us a little background and what has compelled you to come here today to tell us your story?
Hi, I'm Sasha. I am a wife of a alienated father. Sadly, my husband, Andy, passed away, and he never regained a relationship with one of his 4 children, and that is why I'm compelled to speak today. We're currently still alienated, or I am, and the paternal family from the children, and it's just trying to get the message out there that this is happening. It probably needs to be fixed within family courts, schools, wherever, and spread awareness.
Okay, Sasha, so let's go to the start. Where did all of this start for you? I mean, go far back as you want with, you and Andy, how you met, and then how you got involved with the family court side of it, and your whole struggles and journeys and your experience also as a mother or a woman or a stepmother, and what your experience of the system is. So start from the beginning, you and Andy.
Yes.
How did all this happen?
Well, we met and it started quite fast for us, but it was between him and his ex, amicable. They were split.
How long ago was that?
That was 2017 when he and I met.
So 2017, you and Andy meet. He was separated from his ex, and it was an amicable separation.
Yes.
And he had access to his children at the time.
Yes.
And how old were his children at that time? Do you know?
Oh, I mean, the youngest one was about 4 or 5, and then next one up was 6, 7-ish, 8, and then 9. They're all kind of really close together.
Yes, 4, 6, and 8. A couple of years in between. Yeah. Okay, and did he have access to them at that time? Yeah,
yes,
he was seeing them.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all very hunky-dory, amicable.
Yes, and because of his work, he traveled to the U.S., so that's where we met.
Okay.
So he would go work in the U.S., come back, have time with his children, and he was still living in the family home, so he was living in the loft room.
Mm-hmm.
And
so it was an amicable separation they weren't together, but due to the circumstances, family, kids, they lived under the same roof because it just made sense, I presume, financially and how can I put it? Just for convenience sake with the kids and that, it would just make sense, yeah, I presume.
Yes.
Okay.
And once it got to the point where the divorce had solidified because there's a financial order and all that needs to get sorted out. It was he moved into his parents at that point. And I think that's about the time that we would see a bit of a change of, well, not this weekend because the kids have plans. And not this time because...
Did she know that you were with him at the time? Or...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so
it was known. It was known.
Oh, so it was all above board. Everyone
Yes.
knew where they stood, sort of thing.
Yes.
And you're saying once the divorce ended, financial order complete, he was effectively... He had to move out and move in with his parents.
Mm-hmm.
But he was okay with that.
Yeah.
Like he was happy with whatever the financial... Everyone was happy with what they got, sort of thing, yeah?
Yes.
And he had, obviously, contact, like you said, in between work and travelling and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So he had his regular contact on the weekends. But once he moved to his parents, you're saying you saw the shift in the...
contact.
Yes, at that point.
It was, I mean, at the very beginning, it was, you try to schedule FaceTimes. You try to make sure that the times that he was in the country, that he has sufficient time with them. And it became more of a... well, we can't talk to her a certain way, but she said this, like they have this going on, even though it's something that they could reschedule around her time.
So it just got a bit awkward, like.
It got very awkward very quickly. And then she said right off the bat that he would never get Christmas. He would never get the holiday periods because she loved those.
Okay, but did they used to communicate via phone or like face to face?
Yes.
So was it amicable normally, as in the conversation was amicable, but there was like, well, no, but you can't have this weekend because they've got plans now, or I'd rather have Christmas. Was it just an awkward conversation that he had to go through? Or
it was an awkward conversation that he had to go through, and I've only found out later on through, his in-laws telling me, my in-laws, his parents, telling me that, they would have fights over the phone, and, it would get him really upset because, of course, a fight with her is a fight with the mother of the children. And
yes.
So it was awkward and to the point where it was argumentative. But, there's always the fact that she has the children, so...
She's the primary carer.
Yeah.
She holds the cards.
She holds the cards. So everyone at that point was like, well, we have to treat her a certain way. We have to speak to her a certain way. You
can't afford to upset her, really.
Yes,
to
exactly.
You're already playing games, and if she's in a bad mood and you say the wrong thing.
To the point where my in-laws took her on trips, so they would pay for her and the children.
Try and keep her sweet. Yeah. Okay, that's deep.
Yeah, so once the kids are there, that's their mom.
Yeah, so they gave her the respect. Whatever happened, the bottom line is that was the children's mother, and rightfully so. I think she should be given respect. So they tried to appease her and keep her happy, and like you said, take her on trips and stuff just to keep things running smoothly. Mm-hmm. And at this stage, were you still in the US or were you here?
I would come back and forth. So I was prior military. I had met Andy when I was just going to uni post my military service. And so I had a lot of downtime with uni, and I used whatever time off to come to the UK, and I would stay with my in-laws see the children even.
So you were starting to form some sort of relationship with the children as well, right?
Yes. And
the mother was aware of you, and she had no issue as such.
She had no issue once I was introduced. The introduction was Andy's decision. And when that happened, I received messages from her that she didn't appreciate it. But, from my point of view is I'm a support to him. Okay. And if there's no communication between me and her, I can only go off what he does and what he says. Yeah.
Fair enough. Mm-hmm. All right. So can I ask you a question, Sasha? Did you have any kids of your own prior to this?
No. Okay. So I have no children of my own. But coming into a relationship where children are present.
Yes.
I'm very well aware that my wants come after their needs. Okay. And so we had that discussion very early on that there would be certain things that a normal couple without kids in the picture.
Yeah. I think because what it is, I want to try and just touch on this if we could, right? Because I think when people enter a relationship, especially with someone who has children, if you've got no experience of that, people don't understand the dynamics, and it's not all playing happy family. It's all it can be very tricky and awkward, even to try and gel with someone else's kids, because however you look at it, they love their dad, but you're still a stranger effectively.
Exactly.
They're little kids, they don't understand. You might end up in a relationship where you like someone, you love someone, but you're thinking, yeah, but like, I didn't sign up for this. Do you know what I'm saying? So people don't realize how.
So actually, that first message that I got from her, because I've met the daughter via FaceTime, it was, her saying that she didn't appreciate that I met her, and even though it was FaceTime, and a list of her grievances, and I just had to go back like, I'm his support. I didn't have any communication with you prior to this, so it's a grievance that you have to take up with him. But I will support the children any way that you both want. So if there is positive communication between everyone, then we're all on the same page for the sake of the children. I'm fine with that. So I'm not here to be a new...
Yes, you took a neutral position. You're not there for him, her, anyone. You're just a neutral position, as in, look, I'm here to support him and both of your kids and both of you in your co-parenting. But ultimately...
I wasn't there to try and be a new mom.
I have no say in anything to do with the kids. I'm just there supporting him and you to co-parent. It's nothing to do with me. It's a neutral position. Did she have someone in her life at this time as well, or was she single?
When they first split up, she was dating someone. Like, I call him Chip and a Man because that's all I know him as. And to the point where, she would go on dates, and my in-laws watch the children if Andy was away when he was in the UK.
So they're all very supportive, like, so they supported her to have her, say, me time if she's going out on a date or whatnot.
Of course.
So it sounds like it got off, I've said the breakup got off on the right foot, the divorce got off on the right foot, very amicable, everyone's happy with whatever the financial order was. He had regular access. But and how long did the divorce go on for, do you know? Like
I would say the process had already started when we had met. And so I would say it got finalized around a year into our relationship.
So by 2018, the divorce was finalized and he effectively moved out to his parents. And that's when there was a little awkwardness and...
Yeah, I was still around.
Yeah.
And she was still dating, I suppose, and not moved on. It was I think it was a bitterness thing because of conversation that she's had with my in-laws and, saying that she could have changed. But so there was, when a relationship breakdown happens, two parties are involved. So two parties are equally accountable on some aspects.
Yes.
So
you think, so you're saying deep down that bitterness was that she was maybe hoping to maybe get back with Andy. Is that what you're saying? Like she was hoping deep down that
there were messages that she wanted.
So she was hoping that there was a possibility that they could.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this about Andy. He killed it as a dad. Like he would go to work in London, come back, clean up, do dinner, wash up the kids, read bedtime stories.
Hands-on dad, yeah.
Super hands-on. She was a stay-at-home mom, and give her weekends so that she could just have me time and take the kids. And
it sounds like they were co-parenting well. It sounds like they were, they got off on the right sort of start to the co-parenting journey. It sounds like it started off right. So okay, let's move on a little bit, Sasha. So how did things progress from then on? So you noticed over time that things were getting awkward, and it sounds like your in-laws, her ex-in-laws, they were walking around on eggshells around her, not to upset her, because then it would upset the contact with the kids. So everyone's trying to play the game, keep her appeased. How did that progress then? Let's move on a little bit.
It was where she started to do missing out on FaceTimes, like scheduled FaceTimes with the children. And then it would be on certain weekends that he was in the country. You can't see them on this day or have them back early, because I think this was one Christmas that we had where she said that they had plans, bring them back early, and then come to find out it was just to put balls on the Christmas tree, which is something that she could have waited and done at another time. When, because of the situation, he was earning the finances for the family.
He was still paying, obviously.
He was paying so he thought with the financial order, and before the financial order came into place, he was paying her more. But when it came into place, it was toned down a bit to adjust for his actual income. He thought money would alleviate any grievances with the children or access to the children. And, you know...
Yeah, unfortunately, I think that's...
it's a misconception.
It is a misconception, and fathers can hope that the money will sort of appease the situation, pour cold water over the situation and keep the access smooth. I think that's just a desperate plea from fathers to try and continue on, but clearly if there's resentment or bitterness, and in most cases there seems to be, I think the money just adds to the problem, because then you just think that's just another means of leverage to blackmail dad, unfortunately, or the non-resident parent, whoever it is. But so carry on from there. And was he paying through child maintenance services, or was it a private arrangement?
Private arrangement.
So it was a private arrangement, and everyone was seemingly happy with the financial arrangement.
Yeah, and especially because he made it so that she wanted to become a tattoo artist, so he paid for her to get training. And once she was done with training, set her up so that she had all the equipment she needed.
So it sounds like he still was looking out for her. Like, he's still the mother of his kids, so he's still looking out for her.
Her success is the success of the children. And that's with any parent. The success of one parent is the success of the children being brought up right.
Yes, 100%. Okay, so let's move along. So then, like you said, let's just touch on that again. The kids would get called home one day to put decorations on the Christmas tree, which could have waited another couple of hours. But it's silly things like that, basically.
Yeah, and they kept popping up, and it was, it became more and more frequent, and then it got to the point where she was upset over, she started moving goalposts. So he would have to, at first, borrow the family car to take the children out, and... Then we rented a car because she wanted to keep the car. So we started renting a car when we were in country. And then she got mad at the fact that, well, it's not a car of your own. You should get your own car. And then because we were staying at our in-laws, it was, that place is too small for you and the children to have weekends there. We got our own place. And this is over the span of our relationship. We got our own flat. And that's when she was like, oh, they don't like coming to see you.
Okay, so
the goalposts kept moving.
Okay, so over what sort of period of time?
That was over from 2018 to 2020. So those 2 years.
So right. So it was a 2-year period where it wasn't like sudden. It just it
ramped up.
So basically, you had a bit of contact, so you don't want to mess that up. So if she was pushing a little bit more, you just let it go because you think, well, I've got contact, I don't want to mess it up. You're saying this awkwardness, the little petty issues, and come home because we're going Tesco's or whatever it was.
And then the parental responsibility aspect of it too, where, they had a no technology, like no phones up until a certain age. Okay, she went ahead and bought them phones before the agreed time. She pierced their ears without...
It's consulting dad.
Yeah, without consulting dad. She moved the family from one village to another without consulting him. She moved them schools without consulting him. So this was over that period of time as well. So it was not only access, but it was other...
I think, what it appears to be here is... Okay, let's go back to the car again for a minute. So we're touching that. So just so I understand it clearly.
Yeah.
You're saying that when you guys were in the UK, you used to rent a car and you used to use the same car to pick the kids up, drop them off, go out and about, do your thing, yeah?
Yeah.
He then said, that's no good. You need a car here permanently. So you rented a car or brought a car in the UK?
Yeah, we leased a car and it was suitable for everyone to fit
the whole family?
Yeah.
And did she use that same car as well?
No, she had her own car.
Oh, she had her own car. So this was just your car, as in for you, Andy, and the kids now. And you were using that car to get around, and because she wasn't happy that you were using a rented car. Yeah. Okay. Do you have any idea the logic behind that, or?
I try not to think about the logic behind some of it, because for me, I think, well, if the kids are happy, then they're happy when they're at home. You assume they're happy with when they're with dad, you assume. However that comes to be.
Yeah, you thought it's no big deal. It's irrelevant. Basically, the bigger picture is the children, family, we're happy.
Yeah.
It's just a car, lease one, keeps her happy, leave it at that. So there was a car was an issue. The accommodation was an issue. Then she started things that they both agreed on. You're saying, as in obviously, look, you'd have to consult ideally the other parent if you're going to move schools or get a tattoo or a piercing or do something crazy like that. You'd assume it would be good to consult both parents, you know, if you're co-parenting amicably.
But I think with the school that's when we started to see where the system fails children, because you can't really sign up a kid to school without both parents signing on to it. And where they didn't ask for a death certificate at that time or anything, they just assumed mom.
Sorry, so was it after Andy had passed, you moved school, you're saying?
No, this was before.
It was a prior. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
So both parents are alive. There should be two parents to sign off on a children coming into a new school. Where we addressed that with the headmistress, and we got an apology after the fact.
Yeah, I think just like me, Sasha, once I entered the system, I think what people don't realise in the UK, and I've mentioned it many times on the podcast, once father, or 9 out of 10 times, once father leaves the family home or is ejected out the family home, he has no rights in the eyes of the law to see his kids, let alone have a say in their school. So we have to understand that. People don't understand that presumed position. That is the law. You have no real right. And unfortunately, the school, social services, the family court, which we're going to talk about at Kafkas, they, as a society, they align towards poor mum who is seen as the only victim in this.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying fathers are also victims. No one cares. Let's put mum and dad aside. It's these children that are the real victims.
Yes,
so we have to remember that. Okay, Sasha, let's go back to where we were. So 2 years, things got awkward. So you still, but even during this awkwardness and all this pettiness, he was still getting some contact. It broken, and it was a bit awkward, and he had to bite his tongue. But contact is still contact, and he had a relationship with his children.
Yes.
Okay, so let's and if you don't mind me asking, so in that 2 years, whilst all of this is going on, and obviously this can affect a person's mood, so did it not put pressure on your relationship?
I have always told him where it comes to her and how she behaves, that's an aspect that you can't control. You can't control her. Where we've had many discussions about it, where it's not him doing it.
Okay.
And so I never took it out on him. Of course, I would get upset when he would be left without seeing his children, or
if he's in a bad mood, you're spending the evening with him. This is what people don't realise. When you get involved with someone with kids, it brings on a lot of secondary issues onto the relationship, and it puts...
Americans love to call it baggage.
Baggage, we call it baggage. Yeah, we call it baggage. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that baggage brings pressure. People don't realise. It's not easy, it's not easy.
But I wasn't going to hold anything that she did against him. So, we discussed many times what the best way to mitigate her affecting us. And we thought that, well, if we do our best to try and see the children, if we do it positively and we do it in a way that we could look back and be like, well, we didn't act out of line. Okay,
fair enough. Yeah. Then, so you could walk away. Whatever happened, you could hold your head high and say, we did our best for the kids, and we gave in, tried to appease mum. Okay, so let's move along a bit now, Sasha. So these 2 years, this went on. Schools being changed, co-parenting rules are being broken, the electronics, the ear piercing, and you guys sort of muddle through. When did things then? What was the next stage? What happened?
The crescendo was when COVID happened.
Right.
And I would say we had a visit with just his daughter, which is the oldest child, and it was very positive. She was 12 at the time, and so behaved like a typical 12-year-old, a little tantrum here. But he parented he parented through that. So when she went home, it was, she told mom about the little tantrum, and then it was turned into him bullying her, turned into force feeding because the tantrum was over. Well, you can't have pudding.
Okay. So
if you don't eat your meal. Which that was a line that she used before, force feeding, where I don't know of many parents that would say, okay, here's a meal, you're going to go to bed hungry if you don't eat this, where we were just like, try and eat a few bites.
It's
and
a
then,
normal family, listen, feeding time with kids, it's a drama. I agree. You can lose your hair. I've lost all my hair. Listen, a few years I did have with my kids.
And of course,
I've lost my hair.
You know, kids want the sweet stuff.
Yeah,
they want pudding.
You have to have boundaries and discipline. So,
yes.
so just so I could understand it.
She went away and told mom about.
But prior to that say incident, it was a normal father-daughter relationship. You might get a few tantrums, arguments. Just 'cause, look, you're gonna have arguments. It was a normal relationship, and they generally were good. Like,
yeah, she was a daddy's girl, and you know, had him wrapped around.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, fair enough.
So it was, you know, very positive relationship before that, and the thing is, we don't know what happens when they go back home. So it seemed like what reality was with us and the children was a different reality when recounted from mom. And so that's what we started to notice. And then it got back to the point of, he's a bully and you're not going to see her anymore.
Okay, but prior to that then, right, so that was the catalyst, and then launched the situation to a more serious situation.
Yeah, there's always been disagreements between them on parenting.
Yeah, so during that period, so during between 2017 and 2020, that period where, like you said, 2018 and 2020, where the awkwardness was, the back and forth was.
Yeah, because no two people are exactly aligned and they agree on everything. So whatever disputes and disagreements they had before,
what I'm saying is, like, dad could have a healthy disagreement or an argument with a daughter would throw a little strop. It was a normal, healthy parent-child relationship. You had a little strop, you had arguments, and 10 minutes later, I love you, daddy, you're my superhero, you know, the same old. It was a very normal, healthy relationship. And
she was a daddy's girl, so, you know.
But did you never notice that in that 2-year period where obviously kids are also going through this, living with two parents separately?
Yes, so.
Did you ever notice the impact of this playing out in their behaviour? Like, so this was affecting them subconsciously, maybe, you think, on some level or other?
Changeover day was always a bit difficult, especially with one of the children, where they would get sick. They would just wake up that morning if they knew it was changeover day, and they just couldn't bear it. They would feel bad all day, be in low mood, and, you know, it would be in the car ride, one of them would feel sick on the way. It was usually this one of the middle children, and, you know, it was that. And, you know, them, when discussing mom, it was, you know, they had to be secretive about what they do in the other home with us. But we never did it to pry. We just was, what did you do this weekend and all that stuff. But they became more guarded, if that makes sense.
I think we all have to remember that how we perceive the situation from a child's eye is a very different world that they're trying to navigate through, where they're in, you know, they have some inadvertent effect due to the breakup, divorce. It has some impact, and they're trying to manage best they could.
Of course, I mean, for them, it was like, those are the two most important people in their lives.
That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Okay. So that then built up to that incident during COVID. You're saying his eldest daughter was around, had an argument over dinner and pudding, and she went home that day. And
next day.
And look, I would say it's very normal for a daughter to go back to her mum and have a little complaint. Oh, dad forced me to eat my peas and greens and broccoli or whatever it is, or had a little moan and a strop, say, which is very normal. And what happened from there? So just carry on from there then.
From there.
And this was in 2020.
Yes, from there, that was the last time that we actually had her over in the house.
You had the other two still coming over.
Yeah, the other three. So there are four children.
My bad.
And
4, 6, 8, and 12. Yeah, that's right. Sorry.
Yeah, and so they would come through, but still didn't want to. And because of lockdown had started, the line that we were getting from her was, well, I'll wait until the pandemic clears. And so that was, okay, well, we don't know how long that's going to be, but if she's upset or worried about, the pandemic and, mixing with people, fine. We can't really force that upon her. But then it became more evident where she was not communicating. And then shortly, I think 2 visits with the boys after that, or maybe 3, it was all contact and communication was stopped because the situation just blew up in the other home and we just couldn't understand what.
So
it blew up really quickly. So this was mid-March, and by July, I would say in June, it was that.
So when you say blew up and was contact, was that because of COVID, or you're saying there was some issue in the other home where?
In the other home.
So how when you say contact then stopped completely, how was that initiated? Was that like you're not going to see them anymore? It was an email. Or they don't want to see. There's something official came through to.
Yeah, it was an email like, you will not be seeing the children. No more contact and communication until further notice. And that's
reason why.
Yeah. And then, we were dumbfounded because we were like, well, this is a step too far. And I think what we were doing at the time is we were driving my nephew to a football game and we got the email and we were just like, we just looked at each other and we were like, what does this even mean? Like, she can't just stop contact and communication.
Yeah. Sorry to cut in.
No.
Sorry guys, I know someone said in the comments I should I'll try and curb that. Apologies. Right. So how did he take it? Because I think those who have not gone through this, when you're being told that you can't see your, like, out the blue, you're not going to see your kids again, people don't fully understand the shock and horror that a parent can experience. Especially for some reason, it seems to be fathers are meant to be immune to this. I don't know why, but inside you your whole world falls apart to a certain degree, and you're meant to hold it together. So, did you notice or pick up on anything on how he was dealing with this or how he took this?
So, Andy's birthday is in April. The last time we saw Grace was in March. By his birthday, he was extremely low mood. And so this is when we actually had the boys over for his birthday. And it was an exercise for me to try and, because he was expecting, he didn't like celebrating his birthday, but you kind of want to spend it with your children. You want to spend it with the people you love most in the world. And because she didn't want to see him, it was devastating for him. He was in the shower and he said, I just don't even know what to do because she's not here. And, he had his sons there, but at the same time, it's like there's a person that should be there that's not.
A part of you is missing.
And so when that email came in, it was, the initial reaction was like disbelief almost, like what's happening. And then it became evident about a few days later that we have to take her to court because there is no access to them. Like, we tried their phones, we tried means of communication, and we're getting nothing back.
So you just literally had no contact with her?
No.
Period. And did you guys try approaching her at that time, like turning up to the house to knock on the door and speak to her? Or
we weren't going to try that.
It was best to you realised it was best not to try that. Sasha, I think let's just have a quick break and we'll jump back into. I am getting into this into this, so let's have a quick break and we'll jump back into it. Right, we are back. Sasha, it is getting very intense. Now, let's pick up where we left off. That you guys, 2020, by July, lost complete contact. You got an email saying you will have no more contact with the children.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take it from there now, and what happened, what you did, and let's talk about a journey from that point onwards.
We went and we filed a C-100.
Okay, did you guys try and get any legal advice, or did you file it yourself? Did you hire a solicitor? How did it?
No, we filed it ourselves. We've had some communication from a solicitor on her behalf, and
So
we did mediation.
before that, before your C-100.
Before that, yeah,
Okay.
we did mediation. Because with her starting to get a little bit awkward with contact and all that stuff, we tried to mitigate it, and we tried to do it out of court first. And so, we've went through mediation, and mediation, there's no regulation that says that you could go in there and you have to tell the truth. You could go in there and lie, and that's just what the mediator has to work with.
Yeah, unfortunately, I just want to mention about mediation that mediation only works if both parties are willing to play. One party is just not, they don't care ultimately, hence it falls apart, but you still have to be seen to be trying before you file it, which is another cost to father, unfortunately.
Yes.
It's a cost to the parent who has no access. Let's not even say father. That's the other bizarre thing. So just so I understand, after that email, you had a letter or an email from her solicitor, hence then you initiated mediation.
No, we did mediation before the contact was lost, in order to try and mitigate the awkwardness of him starting to lose responsibility and contact.
No, okay, so sorry, so I don't get lost myself, Sasha. So before July, when you got that email where she said you will have no more contact,
Yeah.
After that, you're saying you applied for mediation.
No.
Oh, no.
Before, yeah.
All right, so prior to her doing that,
Yeah,
you saw these issues were happening.
Yeah, we tried to mitigate it outside of court to make sure that we could have an agreement where everyone's happy and it's what's best for the children. And it wasn't successful, and we kind of just saw it as a ticking box exercise.
Yes, that's what it is.
And the only thing that we came away from that is, the two parties have to actually be wanting to achieve something in order for it to be successful. So when we went and filed for the C-100, we put in that we already tried mediation. We're going to forego that. And we paid some mediation service to say that it was attempted before. It wasn't successful. We're not going to do it this time. And then we filed the C-100 under emergent circumstances, because she said no more contact and communication with the children, which is finite, and we didn't know if it was legal for her to just come out and say that without any basis.
Okay, but she was happy to engage in the mediation
Before.
Yes. So prior to her pulling the before disqualifying Andy completely out of the equation, she was happy. She engaged in the mediation. So did she highlight any of her concerns or what the issue was, or?
It was an exercise in blaming Andy for everything she could blame Andy for. I mean, I was in the waiting room while it was happening, and it got to the point where, she went in there and she said that she did tell Andy that she was going to move the children's
school. So it became a he said, she said. It was pointless. There was no resolution going to come from that.
Where, Andy was there and he had the email conversation about discussing when she moved the children's house and school, that she admitted that she didn't contact him first, and he was telling the mediator, look, this is her saying,
right, okay,
what she's saying right now is wrong, she's lying, this is what she said at the time, where she admits that she didn't contact me about it. I was oblivious to the fact that she was moving the home and she was moving them school. So the mediator can't take sides, and can't really hold anyone to account there. And if she's lying, there's nothing to really work with there.
No, it's like you said. I think it was more a tick. You tried your best. It was a tick box exercise. Okay, so let's move forward to the C-100. So you guys then filed a C-100 application into the courts, and just for the viewers, C-100 application is a child access application that the non-resident parent fills out and submits to try and get access to his children or his or her children. Carry on from there.
We filed that. We notified the school of the situation, and the school kind of took side of mom because...
Surprise, surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, they took side of mom because she lives in the village. We didn't live in the same village.
But mum was, okay, just to be fair to the school, mum was classed as the resident parent. So she was
Yes, but they're both listed on there because
Right.
she moved them without Andy present or knowing. Andy then contacted the school and say that's not what you guys are allowed to do. So he took the school to task on the fact that they took in children without two parents there present, and they issued an apology that they shouldn't have done that, and they won't do that again in the future.
Right.
And so he was listed as
as a parent, so they'd have
to
inform him, right? So yes, they'd have to inform him, and I urge all non-resident parents, unfortunately 90% who are fathers, when this stuff happens with the school, make sure you rock up there, you stand your ground, because 9 out of 10 times fathers give up, and because when you go to the school, listen, you are the bad guy, unfortunately, in most cases. That's just a fact.
Yeah, and so they sided with mom right away, and they were like, well, we're not, she said a different story to what's happening, and she's the one that they live with, so we're siding with her. We contacted the council, and the council then came back and said, well, we had correspondence with her, and what she said, we told her to withhold the children. And Andy's response to that was, you didn't verify anything about what she alleged happened.
When you say council, what do you mean?
Like Wiltshire Council.
The local council.
Yeah. So the school...
Social services.
Yeah, so the school is in Wiltshire. It's Mere School. And, there was no reason for them to side because along with that, her being in that village, Andy's lifelong friend married her sister and works at that school. So their uncle who works in that school could have verified that,
the information.
Yeah. And, as I was under the impression that it doesn't matter how information about a child or a safeguarding issue. If you're a teacher, you have a duty of care to the children.
Yes.
And he didn't step up in any of that because if there was no abuse and she's withholding the children, that in itself should be abuse.
Yes.
And that didn't take place either. So, when we heard from Wiltshire Council, they said that they gave her advice to withhold the children without verifying anything or even contacting Andy. We said, well, how is that even legal? Because you just were judge, jury, and executioner on this. And, it took a while, but then they didn't admit fault, but they said that going forward, they'll adjust how they train people on how to react to parents who come forward. Yeah.
So they indirectly
gave her ammunition.
Yeah. So they never admitted any wrongdoing to you, but going forward, we will make sure we apply a bit more due diligence before we again believe someone who. And I presume for them to take the stance they did, there must have been some claims of abuse and the usual.
Yeah.
Okay, so at this stage now, you find yourself, you've been shut out from the school, the incompetency of, I think when you say council, would be social services for that borough. And generally, father can be shut out of, or I'll say non-resident parent, 90% of our fathers can be shut out of children's life just like that, without any consequence, unfortunately.
With no accountability or no, you don't want to say... You don't want to say investigation, but you kind of do.
Unquestioned, but this is what I'm saying, Sasha, that what people don't realise is until you... I mean, look, would you say you had any understanding of these things until you've had your own brush with the system where you think, like, it's that easy to deny one parent, kids just like that?
I'm American, so I came to this country thinking that over here, it's much more progressive. But when going through all of this, I've noticed that family court here is very, very dated. I mean, in the U.S., we have some states that are adopting automatic 50-50 custody because that's what's best for the children.
Yes.
And I think here, because you guys have the Children's Act, where it puts the children's voice in the center of it, they don't really account for the fact that children can be manipulated by a resident parent.
Let me tell you something, Sasha. I don't know if you're aware. The Children's Act was written around a mother.
Well.
I think the Children's Act 1989 was written and built around a mother. Hence,
I mean, and it's sad because if you look at all the studies, it's 2-parent presence is way more effective than a 1-parent home. And then sadly, if you even go further, I mean, there's an institute in the U.S. that did a study that even single fathers are better parents than single mothers. Which, that could be disputed easily, but definitely 2-parent.
You're giving these
homes.
children the best start in life, ultimately, and that's what the job of any parent is. We'll jump onto that a little bit later, Sasha. Let's continue on. So you find yourself in this situation. You filed a C-100. Let's move on from there.
When we got the response is when it was on paper of all these allegations of abuse that never occurred.
Okay, so when did you get that? So you filed a C-100 to the court to say we want access to these children, right? And you got a response from the court saying this is what the mother is alleging, or was it from the mother's solicitor?
Mother's solicitor, and it was formatted to go to court then. Like, that's what she was going to turn into court.
Was it a legal aid solicitor, do you know, or was it a privately hired solicitor?
I don't know, but I'm guessing because the amount of money that she was getting, and he had the financial order that was putting in close to $3,000 in that house a month.
Oh wow!
So she didn't have to work, but she also was doing tattoos and starting that business that he helped her get started on.
Just to clarify, he was giving her almost £3,000 a month to keep that household running for her and the kids, and providing
a happy home, like for the children.
Yes.
They shouldn't want for anything, especially with how hard he works. I mean, him traveling for work and all that stuff. It's to make sure that they have a good life.
No, look, that sounds, that's a very reasonable, generous, and, credit to him, he's provided for his children, so, give credit to the guy. So carry on from then on. We don't know if she was getting legal aid or whether it was that children's money was used to, unfortunately, pay for these solicitors. So you get a letter from her solicitor saying a list of allegations. That is why contact has been denied.
Yes. And the thing is, when we read through it, of course, we're like, well, what type of story is this? Because we document our visits. We always have. We've always documented our visits with them, especially when things started to get a bit awkward. We just thought it would be best to just cover ourselves to make sure that, we take pictures, we write down certain messages to each other. We save emails. At that point, we were no phone with her. Everything was through email.
So it's all documented, right? Gotcha.
Yeah.
And these allegations, then, were they in reference to her being a victim or the kids?
Both.
Right. So what they're saying is he's not a...
But with the children, because we document our visits with them, some of the claims that she made, it's like, well, there's no way that he could have done this on this day because we have pictures of them later on that day.
So just so I understand and sort of viewers understand, was there allegations of physical abuse to the children?
Yes.
So he's disciplining the children a bit too aggressively?
There was one that he said that the youngest child, which when she claimed it happened, he might have been 5 or 6, that he threw the child across the room. Where I remember that time, that visit that it would have happened, it would have been, I remember that there was a big scuffle that when we were doing changeover, we were there picking up the kids for Boxing Day, and, she had one kid sick, and then one was throwing a tantrum, and the child in question that was throwing the tantrum is the one that, she had under her arm and handed over to us, and then he was happy later on. So the only thing that I could think of is well, did she just hand over the child that was just thrown across the room? And isn't she negligent if that is how it played out? Because he wasn't thrown, but then you handed the child over that was supposedly abused. It doesn't make any sense.
The question is, if you knew these children were being, say, abused, you still carried on keeping contact for a period of time if you were that concerned. So I think this is where some of these stories, unfortunately, especially when we go to historic allegations, especially around here, if you thought your child was in danger, you wouldn't put them there. It's as simple as that's the reality. So I think this is where when these historic allegations come, this is where, especially around that sort of thing, they sort of fall apart, I think. But okay, so you got these, you got the letter from the solicitor, allegations of, say, physical violence or aggressive disciplining around the children, and claiming that there's marks on the children and all of this after visits, and that's the evidence that she has produced, you're saying?
Not marks on the children, but she did say that they would have a change in attitude when they come from ours. That was the only physical abuse, is the one.
Okay, so so it's just a more hearsay type of abuse, that the kids are a bit different, they look scared and all that sort of.
They feel bullied, and you chased one of them around the house, or
gotcha. So yes, all right, fair enough. Yeah. So it's them sort of allegations, and was there any allegations against her?
Coercive control, that he was a narcissist, and that he would financially bully her.
With $3,000 a month, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So poor woman.
Yeah, so it was all that type of stuff. But because we had already been for a while.
Evidence, obviously. Was she not concerned that he could show evidence and statements to say, look?
She was not concerned at all, because in her packet that she turned in, she would highlight things and she would say, is this sarcasm? Like, she was questioning it in herself, but if it's not blatant, then how is it abuse? And really, we had a motto that we followed, that no matter what she says to us, because she would name call and she would degrade and say things about him, but it would never go that way, because it was in black and white. So we were like, well, if this ever gets to court, we have to make sure that we're always acting in a way that she can't point to anything. And yes. So we were already functioning in that way, but she wasn't. And so we were just shocked when all these allegations came through, because there's nowhere she could point to say. Okay.
And unfortunately, the term coercive control is a very loose term that is used in family court, and it can be used to justify anything.
Yeah.
Everything is. You could argue that I coerced you into this podcast. I mean, do you see what I'm saying? It's just
twisted my arm.
It's just beyond belief. But okay, let's move along. So look, lists of allegations have come through.
Yes.
Talk us through your journey from then on to where we are today.
So
take your time.
From there, it was an exercise in pretty much managing stress, because it was during the lockdown. So my husband had his own company, and because of lockdown, money and work wasn't coming in, but we still made sure that money was going to the home. Okay. So there was a period of time that we had to borrow money to send, and so there was that. And then with the court, we got a date in, and our first court was via telephone, and it was geared up in a way that, and he documented everything while it was happening, and it was pretty much, she had a barrister, she had a solicitor, and he was representing himself. And it was very evident that he was in a room or on the phone with nothing but women, representing himself and being treated as a perpetrator right from the get-go. And I mean, we had that with the school. We had that with the council.
Services.
You kind of hold the courts to a different standard.
You again I once upon a time believed that fantasy as well, but
Yes.
yeah, let's carry on. So just to be clear, that was the first hearing, and he's representing himself, letting it in person.
Mm-hmm.
The ex is there with a barrister, lawyer, and you're saying they're all army of women, ultimately.
Yes.
Judge, barrister, lawyer,
Yes.
everyone that he's up against, and automatically he was seen as a perpetrator or an abuser.
Yes.
Well, that's the vibe that you got.
Yeah, because he, right off the bat, he said, well, this is my position. And it wasn't just alienation from children to father, it was children to paternal family as well. Yes. So their whole lives pretty much changed. And we kept it child focused whenever he spoke and he wrote anything to the court. It was always the children's are being affected in this manner. And this is why access should be granted again. From that first hearing, they granted contact center.
Okay, so just after that first hearing, they immediately said, initiate contact center.
Mm-hmm.
All right, though it might not sound great, I think that's a good result, to be fair. Even though it's in a contact center, but go on.
Yeah. And so it was that from that point on, contact center, and then we had a date for another hearing.
And how often was it? Was it once a month or once a week?
It was once every 2 weeks. I would say about this time is also where the stress of it all, what we thought, started to manifest into poor health. So I think we kind of brushed it off thinking, okay, well, this is just stress. Later on, further on, stage 4 cancer and, his passing. But I would say symptoms started at this point.
Appearing.
Yeah. And contact center, if you've not been through it, it is, you are a criminal seeing your child.
I think for a lot of fathers, how they've described is you're being watched, how you interact with your children, and again, everything that's related to the system, family court. I know really tough guys, the moment they walk into family court for their own case, they're throwing up before you. People don't realise the emotion, when your kids are involved, the emotional turmoil, and when you're in that centre, you're being watched, how you interact with your own children.
You're paying for the privilege of seeing your own children.
Yes.
And not even as before. And, most...
Awkward.
It's awkward. And the first visit, he went on his own. The second visit, we asked if I and the grandparents could go as well.
Okay.
And my experience with it, because I had to go through it. I know what he went through, but I can't really speak to him outside the fact of what I saw, which was torment. But me being there, and I was just, I considered myself kind of a passenger in the situation. I had my close relationships with all 4 children. And the contact with the boys, because the oldest didn't come into contact center. Okay. She was granted her own decision making because she's of a certain age and a female. They get treated differently if opposite sex, apparently, in this country.
Really?
Yeah, because at that point he couldn't even ask about her GP. Like, he couldn't get information from the GP about her, because if anything was related to a woman's health issue. So
because it was a daughter, if it was a son, he could have, you're saying?
Yes.
Vice versa, if it was a son and a mother, then mother couldn't get hold of son's GP.
No, mom can.
Even if it was the other way around?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think it's because reproductive.
Okay, fine,
yeah. So, when you're in there, they kind of give you a room, they prep you, and, we made it to where we kind of said, what are the boundaries and what can we do with this room? There was an outside area, and, we would bake cakes, we would bring in snacks, we would make it like a picnic. We would bring in games, magazines, and we tried to do activities and stuff, but at the same time, you're in a room with a stranger.
Yes.
Who's there taking notes, and it's very awkward.
I can feel, I can almost live it, like, because you're trying to be there with your kids and be happy, and
you haven't seen them in a while, so you want to cuddle, but then you don't know if it's okay.
You're in turmoil, but you're putting on a brave face and holding it together. It is horrible. Look, I get it. Sorry, Sasha, carry on. So, and obviously at this time you noticed his health was taking a bit of a dive. You guys weren't sure what it was. You just thought it was the stress of the whole situation.
Yes, the stress with the company during COVID,
job
the
loss,
allegations,
the court, kids.
You know, before when the contact stopped and it was his birthday, it was really low mood. But by the time that we were in the contact center, it was really low mood, and then you'd have to suppress the stress and put on a brave face for a hour and a half visit that you then feel like you ran a marathon afterwards, because it's so exhausting. Because you're and I would say that my husband was good at talking about his feelings, but even I can't articulate. I would say I'm quite comfortable talking about how things make me feel and all that, but I can't really articulate seeing those children in that situation they didn't need to be in.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking, and then, you know, you heartbreaks for the children, but then you also have this grown man next to you who's shattered and still trying to be something for these children, and it's all happening for no reason.
It can all be avoided, so Okay, so carry on from there, Sasha. So you're having these visitations in a contact center. Health is deteriorating. You're witnessing the system, the journey, and the environment of what a father mostly has to navigate through, as you've now seen.
Yes.
So what happened from there?
Court date.
Second date, right? Second visit.
I think that is when they solidified that there's no avenue to make his daughter have contact. And
is it because she chose not to have contact?
Yes, and because mother had daughter write to the court. So she submitted writing to the court about, you know, dad being a bully, and, you know, that her only respite when visiting dad was her nanny, which, you know, yes, nanny is great and wonderful, but it was never a thing that we heard her say. It wasn't even in her language. The letter that daughter wrote was very clearly mom's words on paper, but in daughter's handwriting. And so, you know, that was heartbreaking. And at that court date, it was a magistrate all of a sudden. So because of the shortages in the court, we got a magistrate instead of a actual judge, and a magistrate has to hold status quo. So we had been going to these contact centers, and everything's been positive. The children in contact center have said that they don't like the contact center. When can we go to daddy's home? You know, making their voice heard in that space. Even as far as we had an activity of what we were planning out the holidays and what we wanted to do, and one of the boys wrote, "Never come to this prison again."
Wow.
So even then they knew that was not an environment they liked, and they don't even know why they're there. But because we had a magistrate at this court hearing, they can't change anything unless agreed by both parties. And even though we had this positive outlook from the contact center, there was nothing negative towards dad, nothing negative towards Andy and the children. She didn't want him to have regular access in his home. And so we had to continue with the contact center.
So at the secondary magistrates decided that just keep the contact
status
center.
quo is the word that we.
That's right.
Is the phrase that we get thrown at quite a lot. Is status quo. So
okay, and pending what? Pending
the next court.
Pending the next hearing. But was CAFCAS, or as in the social services, involved, or a report done to say Dad is safe around the children because of these allegations made?
CAFCAS was already involved at this point because the visits get reported to the CAFCAS worker. That's right.
Yes.
But CAFCAS, because of their staff shortages, again,
yes,
they never got to sit down with the children to get their ascertainable wishes and feelings, which is the phrase that you'll hear in court. Even though the court could see that the ascertainable wishes and feelings are, we don't like contact center and we don't even know why we're here. But I think also contact centers are not really something that the reports dictate what happens in the courtroom.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's more of a, like I said, a ticking box exercise.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Okay, so talk us through to the next step then. So this continued, and how was Andy's health at this stage?
At this stage, he had been going to the GP and getting blood tests to see what is causing all this sickness that he's been having. So, because he had bowel cancer, it was a lot of gut pain. It was a lot of irregular bathroom visits. It was, he had a couple of fainting spells, and, the blood tests were coming back. There was maybe some liver, like his levels coming out of his liver weren't up to scratch, but they didn't see anything that clearly states cancer. And then also with everything going on, it's like, well, this could be from insurmountable stress.
Fair enough.
Which anyone going through losing contact with children, it is like...
You're in trauma, yeah.
You're in trauma.
Constant trauma.
Even though at this point he had been seeing the boys through the contact center, he had no relationship at this point with his daughter. So it was the grieving of a living child, which, if you lose a family member, that's one of the biggest things you could go through as far as stress is concerned and health. It takes a big toll. I mean, after I lost Andy, I had the shingles and, weight loss. And
the stress will manifest itself within your body physically in some physical form. And I think with every 2 weeks at the contact center and not seeing one of your elders, like their child, when you have that broken contact and you're fighting allegations, people don't realize the roller coaster. You're up, you're down. It is a constant emotional. You could be all right one minute thinking we're gonna be okay. Next minute is doom and gloom. It is a 24/7 mental battle.
It's fight or flight all the time.
Yeah. Fight, flight, freeze. Every time, all the time, constant adrenaline, heightened self-awareness, heightened emotions.
I mean, at this point, he was not being able to control his sweat. Yeah. So he would panic throughout the night. He was sweating through the sheets at night. And, hindsight's 20/20. We should have pushed the GP a bit more, but we were going through something that we never experienced before. We never knew how the toll of the stress of this situation can affect him. And, even at this point, my hair was falling out. We both made sure that we were getting therapy on our own. And, it was nothing that our therapists were surprised to hear, given the situation that we were in.
I mean, there is... I don't know if you've heard of it, but I know fathers that have died from what is known as broken heart syndrome.
Yeah.
Just emotionally broken. It is called officially broken heart syndrome. They've introduced, and fathers are unfortunately dying to that. But yeah, actually, sorry, carry on. So this progressed till the third court hearing.
Yeah. Well, we never made it to the third one. That was in the future. It kept getting pushed back because CAFCAS hadn't done their part of interviewing the children.
Okay,
So
because this was through COVID, I presume there were a lot of delays in between all of these hearings, yeah?
Yeah,
So what
so-
sort of a time period are we talking about? From
So the
that first
second-
hearing to all the contact centre, the second, and when the third? Are we talking the span of over a year?
First hearing was in July, maybe.
2020?
Yeah. And I would say the second one was mid-October, and the third one kept getting pushed back. And
Right, okay. So
and
July,
Andy was
August, September,
diagnosed
October, 3 months. Yeah.
2 days after Christmas.
2020?
Yeah.
2020, December. Okay, so the third hearing was pushed back, and during this period, he had the 2 weekly contact center.
We had to miss one because he got ill and he had to go to a doctor's appointment. Or no, we did go to one. We almost canceled one because of a doctor's appointment, but the visit ended up falling on my birthday, but we had to pretend like it wasn't my birthday. We were just there to see the kids because it was so close to Christmas.
No, fair enough.
And that was the last time we saw them until after his operation. So this is in December.
So December
they haven't
2020.
Yeah.
So Christmas 2020, you're saying he was diagnosed officially at that stage with bowel cancer.
So the December 20th was our last visit, and in that visit we could hear his stomach gurgling. He had dropped so much weight. We're all there. We had to tell the children, yeah, he's gonna go to the doctor. We had an endoscopy scheduled, and they're just gonna see what's wrong with him, and it'll be fine. But by the time the 26th of December rolled around, he couldn't get out of bed, and he had dropped so much weight. He was sweating. He was unable to move up, and irregular bowel movements. We knew that it was something else at this point, obviously, because it was just too much for stress. And I was talking to my mother-in-law, and she was just like, I'm gonna call 111 and see what they say. And we had to take him to A&E. They took his heart rate, resting. It was too high. They told him to stand up. It was like he was running. They rushed him into surgery. They did a CAT scan. They rushed him into surgery to take out the tumor. They found out it had spread to the liver. So that's when the change from court to agreement came, because at that point we were like, well, they took out the primary tumor. He still has cancer, so he's stage 4 palliative. He should see his children at this point. I had it in my head that there's no reason now that he shouldn't have access, especially given the nature of his health.
Yeah. So you thought that when you say he should have access, you mean the courts have no reason to deny access?
I reached out directly to her at that point. So
Okay,
I intervened, and I reached out to her, and I said, I told, as soon as he got into the hospital, we found out about the tumor, and then the operation happened and the cancer. I did my part, and I made sure that she was abreast with all his health.
Okay.
To make sure that she knew how to mitigate what was going on and what was being said to the children. And so when it came that, okay, he's gonna be discharged, this is the plan going forward with his chemotherapy, with his care, and all that stuff. And I said to her, I would like to meet in person. This would be the first time I actually met her in person. I said I would like to meet in person because we need to discuss this as adults on what's best for them.
Yes.
And going forward, it should be what time they have and how they have it with him.
Right, so Karen, so you reached out to her to meet face to face. Obviously, this is a very serious situation.
Yes.
Let's deal with it like adults. The kids need to be made aware, Dad's not well.
Yes.
So
And so we made an agreement to meet in person. It was just in a Tesco parking lot, and we sat down, and I walked through his care going forward, and I said, given the court situation, the best thing that we could do right now is draw up an agreement. You write it out. You list out what you want, and we need to come to a point where they're seeing their dad, because it's now going to be an issue of, do you want to be the parent that let them see their dad before he died, or do you want to be the parent that disallowed them access from their dad before he died? And that it was a very matter-of-fact meeting. It was, I had kept all my emotions in a box because I didn't want to go into that emotive, of course I thought, well, if you were just to behave, we would have caught it earlier. And you can't go back in time, unfortunately, but what you can do is work a way to move forward positively. And so that's all I wanted. Is I wanted the best outcome for him given the circumstances, and the best outcome for the children, because you don't know how this is going to affect them down the road.
Yes.
And so we at that point decided for her and the children to come to the house, see him, visit with him, and then from there she was going to draft with her solicitor the order for contact. And it got tossed back and forth a couple times, and then they signed it, and it got to the daughter was left out of it because she was of that age, so it was just addressing the boys,
the 3 boys,
and the contact going forward between them and dad. And it was every other week and half holidays. So for us, that was good for the time being, given the nature of his work. And going forward, he was very positive on how to handle his health and how to handle the disease. So we just had it in our head, like, we're gonna act like normal, go back to work, try and maintain as normal a life as possible, and see where it takes us, because the plan was that he wanted to work from home as much as possible, and find someone to do his part of the job so that he could be a stay-at-home dad.
Right, okay.
So eventually that he would get more contact.
Yeah. And okay. And was that because obviously the uncertainty of the future, so
yes,
he wanted to spend as much time as possible with the 3 children that he had access to, the boys, obviously because of the unknown, unfortunately.
Yes.
Okay.
And from then on, it was, when we had time with them, it was as positive as it could be. I mean, we did normal life things. So, go to the beach, because we were living very close to the beach at the time. Surfing lessons, walks, trips to London,
So just normal activities, make sure you made the most of the time.
Exactly. And, even then, even once we got the agreement and whatnot, after a few months of good life.
So it was okay for a while.
Yeah.
So.
And then, of course, the alienation started again. But little steps. It was
with
like...
the boys.
Yes, with the boys. It was... They were telling mom that they wanted more time with dad. And, when a kid says that, I want to come and see the Champions League final with dad, his team was Chelsea. They were, this is when they won it. And, they wanted to spend that time with him. And it was a whole family thing. Everyone came to ours. And we watched the game, but, they asked their mom. She said no. She gave no reason. And then it puts them in the middle of that situation again. And then it would be, there was a couple times where someone was sick. And then he would say, well, I lost that time with them. Can they come middle of the week? I'll go pick them up. And and try and have dinner with them. So just
so the awkwardness and the games started again, and
then incessant messaging towards us, and it would be at that point I was in the conversations for the children. I mean, once contact resumed, we had a parenting book,
yes,
a handover book. We had to stop that because it became a bully book where, we just put in the relevant information, like, okay, this is what happened. They said they needed this for their homework. We did this, this, and this. And the next visit, this is what we plan on doing, blah, blah, blah. But then when, we read her half of it, it's, you didn't do this.
Yes.
It's the nagging and
it's tiring. Yeah, it's just tiring.
Yeah, and it's like, well, this isn't what the book is for. The book is just like the relevant child-based information, not having to go at your ex.
You're not. Yeah, I think. Yeah, the problem with co-parenting is, co-parenting means both parents want to co-parent, and when they say these. I think the biggest fact is when people say these two can't co-parent, it's not these. It just needs one not to want to co-parent. Yeah. That's the thing. It's not these two. It's just the one. That's the problem. So sorry. Carry on from there, Sasha. This all started again. Obviously, he's not in a good place with his health.
Yeah. Well, when it got to.
And this is all during 2021. All of this.
Yeah,
this whole
2021.
Period.
I would say by the time April came around, Andy was taking chemo in his stride. It was very positive. He had gained weight. He was doing all sorts of other treatment as well. So we treated him as an athlete in the sense of, well, if this is cancer and, chemotherapy gives us a chance, what marginal gains can we get elsewhere?
Yes.
And so we did different treatments, and the goal was his goal was to make it to the youngest turning 18.
Okay, that's
that was
positive way of okay.
Yeah. So he was like, I want to see all of them become adults. And
how old was the youngest at that time?
At that time, I would say he was 8.
Okay, yeah.
Fair enough. So
he was hoping he'd have 10 years.
Yeah.
So the youngest would get to 18, become a man, and he'd be happy with that effectively.
Yeah.
Hence, if we did this treatment or that treatment, and weighed all the options up.
And we did everything. And, we worked in a way that we were like, okay, we have this for the children, this to send that way, and this is for care. And, we looked at it as we're not buying time, but we're buying his health. We're trying to get as much time as we can through getting him healthy. So he was back to running. I mean, he was an athlete. So he, before he got sick in 2019, he did ultra marathon.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
he was a serious athlete.
Yeah, 100K.
Ultra marathon.
Yeah, he ran the whole thing, and before that, he would do marathons. And there was one year before we met. He did 3 marathons in 3 weeks. So yeah.
Damn right, he was like David Goggins level. Yeah. So when he's an athlete, I thought, okay, guys probably in shape. You're saying he's on like David Goggins level athlete, yeah? Ultra marathons. Okay, fair enough.
So yeah, he was extremely healthy. So of course the diagnosis was a shock to us in that sense. But going forward, we're like, well, we know that he has to keep up his muscle mass. He has to have a certain diet. So he had a nutritionist. He got homeopathic care, all sorts of stuff. And the goal was, I need to see these kids become adults. Now, anyone who's dealt with cancer knows that it has its own agenda. Around, I would say, October 2021 is when he started to, show signs that his health was starting to
deteriorate further.
And that was, I think by October he had already moved into his 3rd type of chemo. So that he had an aggressive round, and then he did pills for a moment, and then he went back to a different IV chemotherapy. So and this is, this is the background. The cancer was the background to the access of the children, because everything that we were doing for his health was just to make sure that he was as present a father as can be for their sake.
Yeah.
So, there was back and forth between him and his ex about contact, and her not giving over the kids when she was supposed to. There was once where 2 children didn't come for a weekend, and it was just one of the boys.
So he's battling this all the time whilst battling
cancer.
The cancer, to try and ensure he's there for his children. He's battling these games, and in his mind, I can only presume that he's worried about time on one side and being there for his kids, and the little contact he has, suddenly when 2 of them don't turn up, inside, like, it must, in your heart,
it was terrible.
Your heart sinks. Do you know what I mean?
And because of the fact that when she withheld, there was one time when she withheld 2 of the boys, we asked her, well, can we talk about this? And do you mind if we record the conversation? She was fine with us recording it. And to listen back to it, it was a man saying, I was supposed to have time with the children. I only get about maybe, I think it's 90 days a year. So out of 360, you get maybe 90 days if things are good. And, she's like, well, no, the court, the agreement doesn't give you any set amount of days. It's just every other weekend. Yeah. And if you miss it, you miss it, is what she was pretty much saying.
Yeah, it's just a cold approach.
It's very cold, and it's not child-centered, especially when the children want to see their father. And so, it got to that point, and of course, in October, also, the oldest boy got to the point where he realized the situation enough so that, he would make comments about not having time with his dad. And in October, he came to me directly. Now, I'm close with the boys, so yeah, I'd say that I'm a support to him, but, especially...
You've got a relationship now.
Yeah, a close relationship where, we had our own messages to each other. I would play Fortnite with them. As they already saw me, even though we weren't married yet, they already saw me as their stepmom, and they would say that to their friends and all that stuff. So he came up to me, the oldest boy, and he was like, I want to ask you something. And he had this thing that when he would ask for something like a toy or a game, he would pull someone to a room, and we would always say that he's trying to negotiate something. So I was joking along with it. I was like, oh, what do you want to negotiate now? And he was like, no, I want to ask about what do I need to do to live with Dad? And I was like, oh, God. At that point, I was like, oh, I wasn't expecting this. I thought, he and I have fancy tea sets. Like, I do fancy things with him because that's just his personality. He's a bit of a ponce. And so, I was just like taken aback. I was like, oh, this is definitely a Andy conversation. And, I had to level him right away, and I had to say, oh, we could definitely talk about that, but I think that's a conversation you need to have with your dad. And you have to realize that, it may not be what you want, the outcome. So I would say don't get your hopes up, but go in it with an open mind and hear your dad out. So Andy took him aside and said, no, really, you can't decide until you're 14. And, at that point, it would also be that's 14 with both your mom and dad agreeing. So, and then he said, well, why wouldn't she agree? And so Andy had to have the conversation about how things have been behind the scenes a bit. And he did it in a very topical, child-friendly way of, when parents split up, it's not always because...
Diplomatic.
Yeah.
Diplomatic.
And this has been happening. And so you guys remember when we went to the contact center, it was because mommy stopped you guys from seeing me. And so I had to take her to court to make sure that we get a schedule and that it was fair. And so this is what we came up with every other weekend and half holidays. And, you know, he went away from that. It didn't seem like he had any hard feelings, any different feelings towards mom after that conversation, which is good because we never wanted to badmouth mom to the children. There was never an instance where I would allow any of that. So even the oldest boy, he's quite rambunctious whenever he wants something, he would act a certain way with his mom. And there was a few times where I had to be like, nip certain behavior in the bud, like, you don't talk to your mom like that, not in this house. So it's always a matter of, you know, we respect all adults here, and we kind of kept that throughout all of what was going on, because they only get one mom, they only get one dad.
Yeah.
So but it was, you know, we have to discuss this issue with your mom when you're old enough. So put it on a back burner. We'll discuss it when you're 14, because as it stands now, there's not going to be a resolution. The next visit that we had with him, he came to me and he said, I had a talk with my mom about moving in. And we didn't want him to go to mom with that. Yeah. And she came back, or she said to him, well, you can't move in with him because you'll just get close to him and then he'll just die.
Oh, God.
Yes. And so I'm hearing this from my oldest stepson, and I'm like, she said what to you? And he was like, this is what she said. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I had to apologize to him because that's the first thing that he shouldn't hear that.
Yeah, that's pretty...
Even if, yes, he, you know, stage 4 palliative care, there is an outcome that everyone knows is going to be inevitable. But a child shouldn't be told...
Wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
You just wouldn't...
And so, you know, I then had the discussion with Andy once the boys were in bed, and I said, this is what he told me. I need you tomorrow to sit with them and, you know, talk about the feelings towards his illness, because now we don't know what she's saying about his livelihood and what time he does have left. Because if she's saying that to him, what is she saying to the younger ones?
Yeah.
And what are they feeling about it? Because, you know, it's not only, okay, you're taking away contact, but also you're saying, don't get close, because this person's not going to be here much longer.
Yeah, that's pretty heavy stuff, really.
Yeah.
Okay, Sasha, yeah, it sounds like quite intense, all of this. Really intense. So let's just move forward a little bit. So how did things pan out in the end? And obviously, you know, and how we got here to now, where things are now. Do you still have contact with those boys or not? And just, let's just move along a little.
So from that point on, you know, his health was in decline. We had been planning our wedding. Our wedding was to be the 24th of March of 2022. We had, because of the state of his health and it clearly becoming a downhill situation where he was losing weight and chemo wasn't working, we decided that in February we'd plan a trip to Las Vegas, and when we get back it would be full on, like, everything for the wedding was going to be done. And you know, the boys knew about the wedding, they were excited. We got permission from their mom, which it sounds weird to say permission from their mom for them to attend their dad's wedding, but you know, that's what it was. And you know, in the beginning of March, we came back, he was very ill, and we decided that he needed to go into the hospital to get checked out because he was showing signs of the cancer moving into end of life phase. So when he got into the hospital, it was bad, but we didn't have it in our head because we were like, well, they haven't told us anything definitive yet of what's happening. And, you know, we were waiting, and then we had to get a DNR, so do not resuscitate. And at that point it was, okay, well, they're going to make him comfortable, and then we're going to find out what exactly is happening. Mm-hmm. So he was there for a couple days, and I think it got to the point where the doctor came in, and she said, all right, if you guys want to get married, it should happen sooner rather than later. And also, if you want to be home for when you pass, it's time to decide if it's hospice or home. Mm-hmm. At this point, you know, you don't want to hear those words. We started the ball rolling with an emergency at-home wedding for the next day, and we contacted the children's mother. We said, this is what's happening. We're going to move up the wedding. His health is on decline. Can we have a visit with the children? So the boys came with her as well. And then the wedding happened, and then, you know, that he had a last visit with them, and then he passed away on the 12th of March.
Right.
Oh, no, the 12th of March is when we got married. The 15th is when he passed, and then the weekend that would have been our wedding was the funeral.
And I take it that the daughter wasn't present at the wedding, or she never saw him?
No. He asked, and when mother came with the children, with the boys, I asked her if, you know, why Grace wasn't there, given the situation. I had wrote or typed out a letter, and it was a bit, it had nothing to do with Andy, and it was very much mom's language almost. Or it seems like it was guided by mom. And that was the last contact that Andy had. So that actually happened, that letter. He read it. We got it the day before the wedding. He read it the day of the wedding. And, you know, I think that was his heart breaking, because he knew that he wasn't going to see her again.
Yeah, and the last time he saw prior to that was before the first court hearing, which was in 2020. So
it had been 2 years at that point.
So she would have been 14. He hadn't seen her for 2 years, and in those unfortunate last moments, he read that letter saying, you know, that she basically doesn't want to see him.
Yeah. Don't want to see you, but I love you.
Yeah, look, it's difficult. It's difficult.
And you know, and then he passed away. And that morning, he passed away at 5 a.m. And, you know, at that point, I had my in-laws, my mother and father-in-law, a sister-in-law, a brother-in-law, all staying because they were helping care for him at that point. Yeah. And so, you know, one of the sister-in-laws came off work. She was working the night shift when he passed. She came off work, picked up my brother-in-law, and they went and drove immediately to tell the children in person.
Okay.
And so, you know, that was contact that, you know, that was needed, and I'm glad that they went and did it in person. And then after that, the kids came to visit after, and I think it was a couple days after they came to the house, and we started talking about funeral and, you know, how we would approach that. And so we sat them down, me, my brother-in-law, and my mother-in-law, and another sister-in-law. Andy was 1 in 5. So there's he has 3 sisters and a brother. And we discussed what the funeral was going to be like. You know, what we were going to do, what stuff was going to transfer from the wedding to the funeral, because Andy wanted a red velvet suit jacket for our reception, and the boys had a matching one, and so did their Uncle Paul, so his brother. And I said, well, he's going to be cremated in the suit jacket, and your uncle's going to wear his.
Yeah.
And if you guys want to, you guys could wear yours. And they were like, yeah. And so there was an understanding that was their goodbye.
Yeah.
And that they were looking forward to being a part of it and being there. And, we had set everything up, and then it got to the point where Mom wasn't happy with the fact that they were involved. And then when the funeral came, none of the children were there.
Oh, yeah, so, that's pretty rough.
Yeah. But I still maintained enough communication with her at that point. I didn't say anything about the funeral and whatnot, but the boys wanted to come down, and through the help of in-laws, we negotiated some time for them to come visit so that they could spend time in the house where their dad lived and see the rest of the paternal family. And that lasted about, I would say, we got a few visits in, and we haven't seen them since March of this year.
March 2023.
So yeah.
8 months.
Yeah.
Okay, and you've got no contact with them since?
No. There's been no visits.
Visits, but you
yeah. I was allowed for Christmas. I was allowed to go to the door and see them and give them presents.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I saw them physically since March. And same with my mother and father-in-law.
They wouldn't have seen, so unfortunately the grandparents, now this is what people don't realise is this is their grandchildren, and for them not to see their grandchildren from a son that is no longer, it must be very difficult for them, and it's taken on a new form of, if we're going to be child focused, they're grieving children. Yeah.
The adults should be able to handle their own grief in the presence of the child so that they are allowed to grieve. And you don't know how they're really feeling and what they're going through, because there's this presence of not having their dad, and then on top of that, their identity that is still left of their dad, the paternal family, has also been taken away.
Yeah, Sasha, I think it's been a very intense journey. Obviously, fortunately, time is short. Is there any message you want to put out to any alienated children out there, children that have grown up without one parent and maybe don't know the full story? Is there any message you want to put out there, and any sort of comments or closing comments on the state of the family court system as you've experienced it?
For the children, I would say give the parent that isn't present the benefit of the doubt, because there's always two sides to a story, and sometimes you don't get to hear that second side. To anyone going through the family court system, I would say document as much as you can and maintain positivity where you can, because it is weighted towards the resident parent, and unfortunately the system isn't going to change overnight. So try to move positively through it. And I know that sounds horrible to say, or to hear, but you have to remember that you still have to be a happy person at the end of it.
Yes.
And those children don't need something to come back to. If they come back in life or later on down the road, they need someone there that can support them still.
Yes.
and to the alienating parent.
Yes.
In my situation, a parent was lost. Whatever you do will come back full circle, because these children grow up and they make families of their own. They become parents one day, and they'll recall what they've been through. It would be a shame to go through life not with one parent and then to grow up and lose another parent because by nature of how you behaved. And of course you could reconcile and you could work on building the relationship back in a new way, but you don't want to traumatize your children.
Yes.
And it should always be, parents should always think of what's best for the child. And even an alienated parent, sometimes it's such a hard position to be in. I would say that Andy tried his best to be positive where he could, but even that's hard to do. And, we had to seek out therapy, external help, like Families Need Fathers, support groups. They're out there. I would say where you could get help, get it, because it is not an easy road. And it's probably not going to go in your favor, sadly, until the kids are at an adult stage in their life.
Okay, Sasha, before we wrap up, do you want to quickly just mention your marathon that you're doing? Is it next year? Just quickly mention your marathon that you're doing before we wrap up.
I am going to be partaking in the Great North Run, and that's in September the 8th. I will be representing Families Need Fathers. It's a great organization for parents in this situation, and they have support. They have a community which you could tap into and seek support where you need it.
And if someone wants to sponsor, is it like a charity sponsor run? Or yes, so do you want to quickly mention where they can get hold of you? And
yes,
make
I will have
a
Just Giving page, and I'll give you the link.
Okay, on Instagram, yeah?
Yes.
Yes, okay, guys, look out for that, guys. Thank you for watching Disqualified Dads, over and out from the trenches.